Hi, I'm Megan O'Day, and I'm an Intelligence Services Manager at Nisos.
And I'm Vaughn Durfee, and I'm an intelligence consultant. We teamed up to write Nisos' inaugural Executive Digital Exposure Trends Report in order to share key findings and recommendations to reduce physical, digital, and other common risks. In this webinar, we want to raise awareness of common vulnerabilities that impact executives, which are also shared by and apply to all people, and educate about how to reduce risks. Executive protection has become a priority for many organizations, particularly within the last 6 months or so following the fatal shooting of the United Healthcare CEO. In January of this year, our team reported that in the 6 weeks after the fatal shooting, our analysts detected a significant increase in threats to our executive clients by at least 41%. Our goal is to shed light on how the digital world exposes high-profile individuals and to identify actionable steps for strengthening executive security. In this report, we examine the evolving digital threat landscape and assess risk trends across our client base. If you have any questions for us, please send them to info@nisos.com for the attention of Megan and Vaughn. Our risk assessments examine vulnerabilities across 4 key areas: physical location data, social media activity, digital footprints, and personally identifiable information, or PII, exposure. I'll turn this over to Megan now, where we'll start by looking at physical vulnerabilities.
Thank you, Vaughn. Having information about your home address and other properties publicly available can enable threat actor efforts against a target in different ways. For example, it can support a physical confrontation with their target or their family, or help threat actors monitor for times when an executive's home is unoccupied. Many popular realtor sites or mapping tools provide internal and external images that can give key details about a property and its layout. Why is this information so freely available? Depending upon the state or county in which an executive lives, permits, tax documents, parcel registration, home ownership sites, and other databases can include accessible address information, as do business registration documents an executive or family member may have filed using their own address. In our report, out of a sample size of 50 executive vulnerability assessments that we conducted over approximately the last year, we found that 98% of company executives had property addresses publicly linked to their name in public records or people search sites. 92% had publicly viewable exterior images, and 88% had interior photos or floor plans available. We also found that 82% of executives had their address available in public business registration, voter roll data, or political philanthropic donation records. While it almost goes without saying, mitigating this vulnerability is important because an individual's home is where their most important people, possessions, and assets are accessible. Threat actor access to information about an executive's home can support intrusion, theft, physical harm, kidnapping, or other dangerous practices such as swatting. There are many instances of celebrities, political appointees, executives, and other high-profile individuals having their homes violated or being the target of swatting calls, all because their address was accessible to a threat actor. The good news is that there are steps that you can take to reduce many of the vulnerabilities that disclose property data online. For instance, you can claim ownership of addresses on popular realtor sites and request ownership attribution and property image removals. However, there are some records that, once public, are difficult to remove, and this varies state to state. These include voter registration, business registration, and political or philanthropic donations. In most cases, these types of documents are considered public record, meaning that the association between a person and their address displayed within is not likely removable. This is why we highly recommend that people avoid putting home addresses on political or philanthropic donations and business registrations, and instead use a registered agent when possible. We also recommend that individuals request data removals for their publicly identifiable information, or PII, on people search sites, particularly sites and databases that are freely accessible to threat actors, who can use such information to identify an executive's home address. In addition to publicly available home addresses, it is important to be mindful about other personal details that we may inadvertently provide to threat actors.
Another way that an individual's whereabouts can be made public is through the geotagging options in applications on our personal devices, like social media and fitness trackers. And it's not just the executives geotagging that can be a vulnerability. Their family members' use of similar applications or platforms can pose a risk to an executive by oversharing sensitive information. For example, in our research, we discovered that while only 16% of executives shared geotagged information themselves, 20% of the family members shared information related to the executive's location. Executives may not be sharing, but their family members are. Another data point highlighting the proximity risk that family members can present to an executive is that 30% of our client executives' family members shared geolocation and pattern of life information on popular public review sites. This not only identified locations where they possibly can be found, but also those with high numbers of reviews effectively provided information about their general area of operation and common locations. Fitness trackers and exercise applications can provide highly detailed location and pattern of life information, including routes and times of day when an executive might be vulnerable. While only one of our client executives and members of 5 executives' families publicly shared geolocation information through popular exercise applications, it's worth noting given the high fidelity of information regarding an individual's habits and the frequent solitude and isolated areas incorporated into many exercise routes. One of the surprises in our analysis is that the incidence of doxing, or the intentional act of publishing private or identifying information, was relatively low. Only 4% of our client executives were doxed, meaning someone intentionally shared their information online, almost certainly out of anger. Doxing events are significant because they indicate malicious intent and action toward an executive, which can have a significant impact on them and their family. Many fitness applications and social media posts with a geotag location may not always provide enough data on their own to pose a significant threat to someone. However, aggregated geotagging and live posts on social media can provide threat actors with enough data points to target an executive, intercept their next destination, and identify when their home is unoccupied or children are unattended. Public fitness tracking applications can display frequented exercise routes, home addresses, and predictable workout routines. Humans are by nature creatures of habit, and predictable schedules and locations, such as a regular tea time at a nearby golf course, can allow threat actors to casually run into executives. While geotagging devices and applications can provide high fidelity location and pattern of life on an individual, minimizing it can be easy. In addition to avoiding geotagging any social media posts, increasing the privacy on all social media profiles and exercise platforms will mitigate threat actor access to location information. Being aware of the potential vulnerabilities geotagging devices and applications present is also key. One preventative measure is to simply delete all unused or unnecessary applications from mobile devices and ensure that each application does not have more permissions granted than is necessary for its purpose. For example, there's probably little need for a flashlight application to have access to your geolocation information. So, in addition to how people potentially share their location through geotagging posts and other means, we also reviewed additional social media activity and patterns for vulnerabilities that exposed other sensitive information for an executive and their family.
Public social media profiles are one of the best avenues for a threat actor to identify sensitive information about an executive or their family and acquire information about their personal life. In the data collected in our review, we identified that executives each had an average of just over 3 public mainstream social media accounts, and that approximately 20% of these accounts revealed personal information. Examples of public information available on these accounts included family pictures, searchable friends lists, home exterior and interior images, important dates such as family birthdays, anniversaries, or graduations, children's schools, hobbies, and extracurricular activities, announcements of conferences they would attend, indications the executive was on vacation, suggesting that their home was unoccupied, exercise routes, geotag posts of their live location, interactions with antagonistic actors, as well as political or other posts that some viewers deem potentially controversial. Through interactions with many executives and social media users in general, it became apparent that many individuals were unaware of how accessible their accounts were. While it might seem somewhat paradoxical, being overly social on social media and allowing access to the personal aspects of our lives represents a significant vulnerability. Personal information available on social media can support impersonation, financial fraud, or physical confrontations. For example, the names of pets or family members, important dates, and associated schools or institutions can provide threat actors with answers to common security questions on sensitive accounts. With enough available information, a threat actor can build out a target circle of trust and understand the executive's network. In some cases, the abundance of family information available through social media profiles negates a threat actor's need to use alternative platforms, such as people search sites or breach information. So, what can be done to reduce this often significant vulnerability? Changing how you approach social media in terms of what you post, how you engage, and your account settings can make a big difference in reducing your risk. We recommend increasing the privacy settings on your social media accounts to inhibit public viewership and require all followers to be approved by you. This will mitigate threat actor insight, contact, and availability for harassment. You should also review your list of followers on social media to ensure that you are familiar with each account that maintains access to your content. We also recommend operating social media accounts as if all posts are public. This includes limiting images of homes, family members, pets, or other pattern of life information that can provide insight into physical locations or common security questions. Avoid geotagging locations or indicating times when you are away from home, as threat actors can use this information to support physical confrontation or property raids. And delete all unused and old social media accounts to mitigate any risk of account takeovers. These data points can also support a threat actor's attempt to cause reputational harm or other fraud against an executive.
Public information such as biographical data, family photographs, and friends lists can bolster the legitimacy of imposter accounts a threat actor can make to either pose as a target to conduct reputational harm or engage with members of the executive circle of trust in an attempt to elicit information or commit fraud. We found that a number of executives were the target of imposter social media accounts or account takeovers. 18% of executives were the target of imposter accounts on social media, most of which were used to support financial scams and conduct social engineering on unsuspecting victims. While many high-profile individuals have dozens of imposter profiles across many social media platforms, most accounts are poorly created or are clearly satirical. However, we emphasize that imposter profiles using legitimate photographs or family information, particularly those using more obscure photos available on family member social media accounts, had the potential to do increased reputational harm. Additionally, threat actors who take over current or old social media accounts for an executive can cause reputational harm by posting problematic content from an authoritative source attributed to that executive. Many people own multiple social media accounts they have not used for an extended period of time and have likely forgotten about. These old unused accounts, which often maintain dated and weak passwords that are accessible as part of exposed and cycled breach data, offer threat actors an opportunity to take over the account and post from an executive's perspective, which can cause reputational and other harm. In order to best protect against the harm of imposter accounts, particularly those that members of the public might believe to be legitimate, you should increase the privacy settings on all social media accounts. You can also reduce the risk by taking an audit of all your social media accounts and deleting unused profiles. This inhibits the threat of account takeovers and reduces the amount of available content fraud actors can use in their schemes. As well, it is vital to ensure that passwords are not repeated across multiple accounts, as the exposure of one account can then lead to access to all accounts, and ensure that all known breach passwords are no longer in use on any accounts. And as what comes as no surprise, the vulnerabilities a threat actor can exploit regarding an executive's social media account are also those available through their family members. Often, threat actors will target family members and close friends when gathering information, particularly when an executive has limited information available on personal accounts.
Just as with physical vulnerabilities, social media accounts belonging to family and friends extend the risk posed to the executive. When it comes to social media, family members' activities increase the executive's exposure. We found that immediate family members maintained an average of 6 public mainstream social media accounts. Their accounts expose similar images and geolocation information as executive accounts, but often at a higher frequency. Threat actors can often acquire unique information from public social media comments posted by a target's close friends or family. Extended family members can overshare information, such as mentioning a child's name in a comment on an executive's public photo. Posts about children's activities and event schedules also enable threat actors to identify physical locations, such as schools or sports venues. This increases the risk of a physical confrontation with an executive or their family. Similar to the steps we recommend all executives take, their family members should also increase the privacy settings on all social media accounts to inhibit threat actor insight, contact, and harassment. Review comments and other engagement on social media to monitor for family members or friends who overshare your information, such as identifying children in photo comments or posting pictures of an event at your home. Discuss with family members potential dangers and social media best practices. Encourage them to operate social media as if all posts are public, including limiting images of homes, family members' pets, or other pattern of life information that can provide insight into physical locations or common security questions. We've helped individuals whose families were significantly exposed enhance their security within the course of an afternoon and reduce vulnerabilities through regular diligence and review.
In addition to social media associated vulnerabilities, we also regularly identified sensitive information for executives through digital vulnerabilities that are accessible to threat actors. When we talk about digital vulnerabilities, we're referring to sensitive data, meaning biographical, financial, or contact information, being accessible publicly or through specific channels or forms, often due to a data breach. Data breaches are an increasingly common reality, and the bar to acquiring an individual's sensitive information is consistently lowering. Our analysis found that many executives had these digital vulnerabilities. For example, 58% of executives had their social security number compromised in a data breach. 72% had their social security number listed for sale on a popular dark web marketplace. 90% had at least one plaintext password exposed in breach data, with each individual averaging around 3 exposed plaintext passwords. And 100% of executives had breach data linking their name to at least one past or current email address. Additionally, each executive had an average of 4 email addresses exposed in breach data and 3 telephone numbers. Like with other vulnerability categories, the risk to an executive through their family member's digital footprint can increase the risk to an executive. We discovered that of our executive clients with spouses, 26% of their social security numbers were exposed in data breaches, and 39% of the client spouse's social security numbers were listed for sale on a dark web marketplace. As well, 70% of the executives had immediate family members' personal or contact information exposed in breaches, creating additional possible targets for nefarious actors, additional contact methods, or means to confirm an executive's suspected address. So why does this matter? Recent breaches for major companies and organizations have almost certainly increased the overall threat landscape to an executive's family. While portions of most individuals' data were previously accessible in disparate exposures, recent major breaches and the continued threat of other major events enable threat actors to easily acquire data that previously required significant effort, potential cost, and research time. These pieces of information provide threat actors with the power to access an individual's financial accounts and personal accounts, including email, travel, banking, and more. Learning that your personal information is exposed in a breach can be disheartening because, as many of us have heard throughout our schooling or careers, the internet is forever, and there is no way to completely remove everyone's access to information that has been breached. However, there are a number of things you can do to reduce digital vulnerabilities. These include remaining alert for suspicious activity that can indicate fraudulent use of exposed social security numbers or bank information, and regularly checking statements for anything out of the ordinary. Freezing credit to protect against fraudulent activity in the case that sensitive information becomes compromised. Identifying and ensuring that known compromised passwords, simple passwords, or ones used on multiple accounts are no longer in use. Using unique passwords for all accounts, and maintaining awareness of any exposed email addresses and phone numbers that threat actors can use in possible phishing attempts.
The last main topic we want to cover in this webinar relates to personally identifiable information, or PII. PII contains personal, sometimes sensitive information that can be tied to an individual and is generally available on people's search sites, through public data brokers, and on business search sites. Not all, but many of these sources are available to the public for free and include personal information such as dates of birth, residential addresses, the names and dates of birth of family members, a person's email address and phone numbers, as well as business-related information and employment history. In our report, we took a sample of approximately 200 PII sites that generally contain information accessible to threat actors. The sources were either publicly available or had a low barrier to entry process that enabled immediate data access, such as purchasing a target's report. Out of the sampled 200 PII sites, our analysis uncovered that an executive's information was available on 95 sites on average. Like other digital vulnerabilities, these pieces of information can be used to unlock personal, medical, and financial accounts and provide threat actors with extensive access, and support many other types of fraud or physical harm. The challenge with PII is its broad availability and difficulty in permanently removing it from public view. Combating PII exposure is a consistent and ongoing process, as many of these sites are regularly created, destroyed, or rebranded, and it is possible for an individual's previously removed information to reappear on sites, therefore requiring diligent monitoring and removals in some cases. However, PII exposure mitigation is possible. For example, you can request PII removals for all current residential or contact information available on popular people search sites, databases, and data aggregators, and regularly check and submit removal requests, particularly as data can repopulate on sites or may not be removed after a single request. A concerted, hands-on approach and perseverance over time is key and can require collaboration with the executive themselves. Executive involvement is required given the fact that several sites require the executive to provide proof of identity documentation or use official business or attributed email addresses to achieve a removal. In these cases, we're able to make this as easy as possible by providing step-by-step guidance for our clients.
In today's digital world, executives are more vulnerable to threats than ever before. In our executive vulnerability analysis and report, we identified common digital exposure trends that threat actors can use to target an executive and their family, property, or accounts. The trends we identified pose possible physical, digital, and reputational risks and can provide threat actors with sufficient information in their targeting considerations, possibly also enabling fraud and account theft. The good news is that by becoming aware of the vulnerabilities, prioritizing executive and employee protection, and following best practices, you can reduce the risk.
Our top 3 recommendations are: identify where sensitive information exists and mitigate exposures. Implement best practices. Ensure social media accounts are set to private. Regularly remove PII from hosting websites, and be aware of where an executive's personal information exists online on an ongoing basis. And last, but certainly not least, make this a priority and enlist the help of those within your organization and beyond to help protect yourself, your team members, and their families. By working together, we can make it a lot harder for threat actors to successfully target, harass, exploit, and threaten the safety of your organization and people. Thank you for your time and attention. We hope this information was helpful to you and you walk away from this session with at least one new insight or tangible action you can take to reduce executive and employee risk. Again, we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.